Hey, what's up guys? Miles G170 here, coming at you with a new video. So, it's finally November, no more of that spooky, scary, weird stuff, right? Right? Well, no, not really, because it is Zelda month. And with Zelda, inherently, you're gonna get some weird, spooky, strange games. So we're gonna do 4 reviews this month, each detailing a different type Zelda game. First up, probably one of my all-time favorites, Lynx Awakening. Originally releasing on the Game Boy in 1993, this was Link's first foray into the handheld arena, and I loved it. Funny story, this is actually my very first Zelda game. I actually played this before I played the original, Link's Adventure, or Link's Awakening. And this was also the last official release until we got Ocarina of Time. This game was re-released as a Game Boy Color upgrade, a deluxe edition, if you will, with the release of Link's Awakening DX, which added another dungeon and some interesting options with color, including 2 tunics that changed whether you were stronger or more defensive. In 2019, this game was actually released a 3rd time, this time for the Nintendo Switch, and that's the game that we're going to be talking about today. So, you have 3 versions of one game, each adding and removing certain features. Normally that's a recipe for disaster, but honestly, Link's Awakening on the Switch is fantastic. With that in mind, let's jump into our review of Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening on the Nintendo Switch. So when talking about a Zelda game, you have to talk about the music. It is such a huge part of every game, whether it's just talking about the beautiful tracks, or how they actually incorporate music into the game. Link's Awakening actually did feature the ocarina 4 years before Ocarina of Time. The ocarina actually is very useful in this game, featuring 3 songs that make the game much, much better. One of them is actually needed to progress the game to the end. One of them lets you warp between your warp points, and the final one lets you bring certain objects to life, including a flying chicken. Gotta love it. Throughout the game, you're reminded that you're in a tropical setting through the use of their music, but you also get the sense of dread and despair as you explore Koholint Island through just musical cues. From the opening cinematic all the way through the familiar title screen music, you are very well aware that you're playing a Zelda game. The music sounds great across all 3 versions, but the Switch remaster really hits home. If you haven't listened to the Battle of the Windfish before, do yourself a favor and check it out. It's a great track, and I don't think you'll be disappointed if you're a Zelda fan. So when this game was announced, a lot of people were put off by the graphics, which unfortunately is a very common thing in the Zelda franchise. And it's a fair criticism. The chibi or toy-like plasticky characters really don't feel great until you start playing the game. It's such a crazy switch going from the epic anime style intro to the toy-like atmosphere you run into. But it helps the game once the story starts to unravel and you start to realize what's going on. Something feels off with the graphics, but it's done on purpose. It makes everything very dreamlike. Another great thing about this art style is it actually gives the characters a lot of expressions. If you watch their interactions as they talk to each other as they progress through the scene, there's a lot of big expressions throughout. It's really kind of cool to see everyone interacting the way they are. And come on, look at this little Link and tell me he's not adorable. Look at this chain chomp. Wait, that's a chain chomp. We need to talk about that. So along with the graphics, you have a lot of characters making their debut in the Zelda universe. Marin and Terran obviously return with different names very shortly after this game in the Ocarina of Time, inspiring Malon and Talon. They also kinda look like other people. The Marin one is compared to Princess Zelda often. In fact, it's the first line is Link asking her if she's Zelda. But that Terran guy, he kind of looks like... Is that... That's Mario. Yeah, Mario is in this game, as is Luigi, as is Kirby, as are Chain Chomps and Goombas and Bloopers and Cheep Cheeps. I think there's even a picture of Princess Peach being passed around, for goodness sake. Yes, this game has a lot of strange cameos, and I think it's kind of fantastic they added these elements that make you stop and think, wait a second, is that Yoshi doll? It's great. It's definitely on purpose. It's definitely there to throw some homages around, and I loved every second of it. Fun fact, you can even jump on the Goombas when you can't really jump on other enemies, but you can jump on those Goombas, and it's awesome, and I love it. Alright, now we've talked about all the stuff that makes this game look the way it looks, or sound the way it sounds, but let's talk about what we're really here for. Let's talk about the gameplay. Now, I've always been a big fan of 2D Zelda games. I oftentimes think they're more fun than the 3D counterparts. But this one just feels great to me. The swordplay is easy to pick up. The items all give you a sense of uniqueness. I love the way the hookshot operates. The puzzles are fantastic, even if they're a little tedious if you're playing on the older versions. But overall, they're not too bad. They're not too difficult, but they're enough to make you think. The dungeon layout's fantastic. Whether you are exploring it the first time or the 50th time, you still have to stop and think, wait, how did I do this last time? The mini-games that are included in this game are very fun. The trendy claw machine game may make you feel like raging, but you're going to look back on it fondly. I promise. Just trust me on this one. You will remember it, and it will make it fun, even if you try to get that Yoshi for far longer than you should have. But it's fun to have a minigame like this that's actually plot necessary as you go on. If you've been around my channel for a while, you know I'm a big sucker for fishing games, and the Lynx Awakening one is actually pretty good. I really enjoyed it. It's not the most polished, but remember, this game was made originally for the Game Boy. So a lot of this stuff they're doing was kind of groundbreaking at the time. Probably the thing most people will think of when they think of this game is the trading mini-quest. The trading mini-quest is ridiculous in the best way possible, and you don't even realize you're on it until you're about halfway through it. But it's always fun to watch how the different characters react to their trades. Here, check it. So first you play the crane game to get the Yoshi doll. Then you trade the Yoshi doll to get a ribbon. The ribbon then becomes a can of dog food, which then becomes a banana. You give the bananas to monkeys and they build you a bridge and leave behind a stick, which Terran uses to poke a beehive who leaves behind their honeycomb, who you give to this bear and he gives you a pineapple. This guy's starving, so he eats the pineapple and gives you a hibiscus flower. You give this to the goat, who gives you a love letter to give to Mr. Right, who after seeing the beautiful goat, which is actually Princess Peach, gives you a broom. You'll give the old lady the broom, which she'll then give you a hook in return for, which the fisherman will use to catch you a necklace, which you'll return to the mermaid, who will give you a scale. You take that scale and put it into a statue, and it becomes a magnifying glass. You use the magnifying glass to find this guy, who gives you a boomerang if you trade him what was in your A slot, who will then sell you your item back for 300 rupees. Congratulations! You just went on a super long trading quest to get the best weapon in this game. The boomerang is so overpowered, and I love that they added the addition to be able to buy your item you traded for the boomerang back. This lets you actually get to keep an item that normally was lost to you forever. The dungeons aren't all masterpieces, but the final dungeon of the game really does stick out in my memory as probably one of my top 3 favorite 2D dungeons. So, to even get into this dungeon, you have to fight a boss. Just before you can even go in. Hey, here's a boss fight. Good luck. And when you get in, even the feeling of the dungeon is different. Everything feels more dark. See, throughout the game, you've been fighting bosses that are called nightmares. And they are telling you, hey, if you do this, bad things are going to happen. And from the first dungeon on, everything started to get darker and more desperate. But by the time you get to the final dungeon and they are doing everything in their power to stop you, it's getting real. Now, am I going to say that these dungeons are difficult? No. Am I going to say that this game is going to take weeks to complete? No. Actually, in just recording the footage for it, I was able to beat it on hero mode in probably about 10 hours. But I had a blast doing it. I loved it. I had a great time collecting things. I had a great time exploring it, playing the Dampe's graveyard, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But it's a super tight game with great controls. There's a lot here, and if this game had been made now instead of 93 originally, I think they would be able to do a lot more with it. It kind of makes me think of when they returned to the 2D format for Link Between Worlds. Like I said, I'm a sucker for these types of games, and this one carved the way for two fantastic Capcom releases a few years later. So I think you have to credit Link's Awakening with innovating a lot of the Zelda gameplay, especially the Zelda handheld gameplay going forward. So I told you a little bit about the dungeons, but I didn't tell you what they did to improve dungeons in the Switch remake. See, in the original game, if you completed a puzzle, whether it's a combat puzzle or several of the other standard puzzles, you would have to redo this puzzle every time you re-entered the room. And with this dungeon layout, you had to backtrack a whole lot. It made the game feel very tedious. I've actually been replaying the original on my 3DS so I can compare them, and I can tell the difference almost immediately. The Switch remake fixed that, and it made everything a lot more smooth. But it also simplified some things as well. Bosses don't feel nearly as deadly. Speaking of bosses, this has a really cool mode that I didn't fully grasp when I was a kid. But when you fight the final boss, he goes through different incarnations of bosses you may recognize. I'm showing them on the screen right now and see which ones you guys can pick out. But at the time, I didn't recognize most of these because, again, this was my very first Zelda game. So it's kind of cool revisiting now and getting to experience what you guys got back then. The last thing I want to talk about with you guys today is something that they removed and something that they added. See, in Link's Awakening DX, they added a mouse character that went around taking pictures of you throughout the island that they were really cute, but they were made to be used with the Game Boy printer. So when this game was announced, I thought, oh, cool, well, we can take these pictures and we can share them through the Switch's photo app. But they didn't include it. Instead, they added something way, way cooler. They included essentially Zelda Maker. Now let me explain. They added Dampe, who wasn't in the original game, into this game, and he would craft you different rooms based on your adventures and let you build your own dungeon to explore and share with your friends. This means that you could change your bosses, you could add as much treasure as you wanted, you could make it as difficult as you wanted to make it. You could have rooms of mini bosses back to back to back to back. Nintendo, for this anniversary, why couldn't we have gotten a Zelda Maker? You already had the blueprints with Link's Awakening. I think that you're just letting money sit on the table with this. In the end, Link's Awakening is what it is. It's a fun Zelda game that you can pick up and play without having too much experience. Little Miles was able to beat it, Old Miles was able to beat it, but it's still a Zelda adventure. You still get that sense of wonder, that sense of accomplishment when you beat it. You still love hearing your different tunes for different achievements, and you still love going out of your way to save the day. In the end, this game is one of my favorite 2D Zelda games. If you haven't given it a shot, I implore you to give it a shot. It's a great game. Don't just take my word for it. Try it for yourself. Alright guys, have a great rest of your day. Remember, take care of yourself, take care of your friends, and be better. Bye guys. Hey guys, I was just checking my video analytics, and I just noticed that most of you guys aren't subbed to me. So hey, if you're enjoying the content, feel free to drop a sub, hang out for a while, come check us out live on Monday and Tuesday at 6:30 Eastern. We play a lot of fun games. We have a great time. If you guys do stop by, I'll be more than happy to introduce you to the rest of the crew. Bye, everybody.